Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Freedom Report. I'm here with a very special guest. We're here with Jan Helfeld. Jan is a professional congressional debunker. Jan, welcome to the show.
I appreciate that title.
Yeah,
that's your title.
That's a good one.
It's the best title I've got so far.
Professional congressional debunker. Now, I say that because if you don't know who Jan Helfeld is by name, you will know him in just a few minutes because you're going to get on YouTube and you're going to Google Jan Helfeld Harry Reid, or just Google Harry Reid income taxes voluntary, because this is the man sitting across from me who got Harry Reid to admit that the income tax is voluntary. What in the heck was he smoking that day, Jan? What was that all about?
Well, that's what happens when you defend indefensible position. Mm-hmm. You want to be consistent. What happens is that you end up saying ridiculous things to support your case. Mm-hmm. It's called reduction ad absurdum. Mm-hmm. It's an old technique of defeating your opponent in a debate when you get him to say things that expose him to ridicule.
So that's what you try and do. See, Jan Helfeld tries to nail these Congress members. He tries to get these people on record saying ridiculous things, and he has gotten them saying some ridiculous things. This guy gets access, ladies and gentlemen, like you would not believe. I don't know how he does it, but somehow he slips in between these security guards, and he gets these incredible interviews. He got one with Nancy Pelosi. Now, what Nancy Pelosi, she ended up calling the guards on you, didn't she? What happened?
Well, she actually, I caught her in a contradiction, and actually a lie. She was claiming that she paid her interns minimum wage when in fact she didn't.
Right. Because she's the one who wants everybody to get a minimum wage except her interns, who she wasn't paying at all.
Some of them she was paying, but others she wasn't.
Right.
And she didn't want to admit it, and so she got upset. And I think one of the parts of the interview that was very exciting was when she said to me, "You made a mistake."
Whoa, that's a threat almost.
And then she said it again, "You made a mistake." And I said to myself, Pelosi, mafiosi, kneecapping. So here's a good tip. Mm-hmm. When somebody threatens you when you're on video, get them to elaborate. Mm-hmm. So I said, "What was the mistake?"
You got it. You had an interview that got really hostile, where the guy's like, "Get out of here!" Like, who was that?
That was Congressman Pete Stark.
Pete Stark, yeah.
He actually, this big to-do about this guy they were going to throw over the balcony that threatened.
Oh yeah, Michael Grimm.
That already happened to me years ago.
Yeah.
But Pete Stark said, "Get the fuck out of my office, or I'll throw you out the window."
That's right. That's
what he said.
Yeah.
And I did it better.
That was on camera.
It was on camera.
And didn't they try and take your tape?
Absolutely.
They wanted to get your tape. This is like, crazy Battlestar Galactica kind of weird stuff going on here. So, I mean, what are some other major high-profile interviews that you've done? Have you had Pete Stark?
Stephanopoulos.
George Stephanopoulos. What was the outcome of that? What were some of the highlights?
George Stephanopoulos I interviewed on racism. Mm-hmm. And I asked him this very softball question, which is, if you think somebody has bad character because they're black, would that be racism?
Yeah.
And he walked out on the interview. He said he didn't want to answer that question. He said, "What's wrong with the? I mean, it's such an easy question. Why
do you think you walked out?"
Because he knew I was leading him to a contradiction.
You knew.
Let me say something from before. I don't try to get them to say ridiculous things. What I try to do is examine the reasoning. And if I think there's a flaw in the reasoning, I try to lead them to a contradiction. Mm-hmm. If they want to be consistent with their mistaken position, mm-hmm. end up saying ridiculous things or contradicting themselves. In either case, in my view, their position is defeated, because mm-hmm. if they contradict themselves, they're necessarily mistaken. And if they say ridiculous things to support consistently their position, mm-hmm. then they're also defeated because they're exposed to ridicule. So I don't know which is worse.
Interesting. So as a professional congressional debunker, your job is to go out and expose these contradictions. You talked a few years ago when I interviewed the first time, we talked about the Socratic method. Now, not a lot of people know what that is. Can you give us the sort of Fox News version of what that means? How to use the Socratic method to interview people in order to expose these contradictions?
It's what I was saying just a moment ago. What you do is this. A person has a public policy that you disagree with, mm-hmm. okay? That public policy is based on certain premises. Mm-hmm. I can give you some examples later, but let me go through it theoretically first. Those premises often contradict other conclusions that the person has in his mind, but he is not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you examine the premises. Then once you find out what the premises are, you identify a conclusion that everybody holds or that's obvious, and then you point out the contradiction between that premise that supports his public policy and that other conclusion that he holds.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, Santorum, for example, I interviewed Senator Santorum, and of course we all know, he's, as they say, pro-life. In other words, he wants to make it criminal to have an abortion. And the premise of that position is that the embryo should receive the same rights and protection as any other human being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that was in contradiction with another conclusion that he holds, which is that if a woman performs an abortion on herself, she should not go to jail. In which case, the embryo is not receiving the same protection and doesn't have the same rights as any other human being. The embryo has none.
So how did Santorum respond to this line of questioning?
He wanted to leave.
He wanted to leave. Jan Helfeld is the king of getting big interviews with big people, exposing their fallacies, and then having them march out of the door, threaten to throw them out the window. So,
but it was kind of interesting. He really had no. He thought he had to think about it or whatever. I don't know. But so that's and another example would be in the field of domestic policy. When I interviewed Congressman Connolly. Yeah, Connolly from Virginia. He said that the government should protect peaceful citizens against people that want to use force to take their money. But at the same time, he thinks that the government should not protect them. There's a point blank contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
When you examine his other conclusions, they're in contradiction with that conclusion.
So where can people go to find out what you're doing now? Do you have a website, or do you still got a YouTube channel that you're rocking on? Where can people go to find out more information about this professional congressional debunker I have before?
Well, they can go to janhelfeld.com.
Mm-hmm.
Or they can go to YouTube, where I have almost all my interviews.
Mm-hmm.
That would be YouTube/Jan Helfeld, JANHELFELD.
That's JANHELFELD. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to the Freedom Report with Jan Helfeld and Austin Peterson at the International Students for Liberty Conference in Washington, D.C. This podcast is brought to you in part by Adam Puff at Puff Wealth. That's Puff like Puff and Blow, PUFFWEALTH. Adam Puff, if you've got some money stashed under your mattress, don't let it sit there. It's just going to lose value. Give it to Adam Puff over at Puff Wealth. Jan, thanks a lot for joining our show, and have a great day.
Thank you very much for this great promotional interview.
Thank you very much.
Bye.